Hey, good morning. We are so grateful that you have chosen to be here on this Sunday morning, whether you are here in the auditorium or you're worshiping with us online. We extend a very special and warm welcome to you, and grateful that out of all the things that you could be doing right now, you have chosen to worship. If you're listening to us via podcast, we're also grateful for that and consider you to be a vital part of this community. If you're newer to West, we have a welcome station set out front, and we will not inundate you with propaganda. No one's going to show up at your front door, but we would love to know that you're worshiping with us. Or if you're worshiping with us for the first time or checking us out online and you're newer to West, we would love for you to text in. You can always email the word info, I-N-F-O, at headingwest.org, and let us know that you're new to the community if you're listening via podcast, or you can scan the QR code if you're online or in person that you see on the screen and let us know that you're here. We are about community in a day and age where you can YouTube or podcast any content you want, especially really great theological content. We also know that building community is vital. And Dawn Lynch is our connections and community catalyst, and she does a lot of other things as well. She wears many hats, but she is the person in our staff that one of her primary roles is to help us find ways to build community. A few weeks ago, about a month ago, Dawn came to me and said, I've been working with some folks to brainstorm what we do for summer, because no one wants to go to a weekly commitment in the summer. And I said, sure. And so she lays out all these options, and they all but one sounded good to me. First of all, we did something we regret. We should have made it a wingman woman group. We recognize that. Lots of you said, I'd like to be a part of the wingman group, but I'm not a guy. And so that one was a great idea. We'll try that again later on. But one of the ideas I thought, that's a little sketchy. And when the staff bring an idea to me, I try really hard not to let my ego get in the way and to ixnay it before we even try. But Dawn said, we're thinking about a potluck. And I'm like, okay. First of all, when West launched 15 years ago, we said we'd never be that church. We're not going to have a potluck. That's old school church. That was 30 years ago in North Morganton when they would come and they would bring their dishes, and it was the best cooking you'd ever want, to be honest. And then Williamson's Chapel had potlucks. We're not a potluck kind of church. And Dawn's like, a group of people really think this would be cool. And I'm like, all right, put it out on the poll, and I'll be darned. You folks, like, that was the biggest one you voted for. I mean, it had, like, on social media almost 50-50, and then the in-person, I'm like, all right, you guys are right. I am wrong. And so then we do what we do best. We don't think through all the parts and pieces until you're right at it. And you're like, oh. And so we were talking about what time this said lunch should start. And we're like, well, first we have worship, and that's not anywhere near the state park, so that's like going to be a 20-minute drive. And then where's their food? A lot of you get here like at 8 a.m. because we set up and tear down every week. I'm like, this is going to be like a breakfast potluck. And then we had the idea of having worship at the state park. And what a great way to kick off summer. So 2 weeks from today, we will not be here, and we will live stream. You will have worship for our online community, but we will be at Lake Norman State Park. We have a sign-up genius that we would like for you to fill out, because sometimes at places and events like this that you're not used to having, maybe I've lived this, everybody brings ham. Like, just everybody brings a tray of ham. And perhaps people don't like ham. And so we are going to have a sign-up genius, not because we're trying to hold you accountable, but because we just want a variety of food. And I promise, if you're sitting there with anxiety right now going, I am not going to this because I hate going to things like this, so do I. As I get older, I developed social anxiety, which is the weirdest thing. But we promise you will not feel left out. You will not feel like you don't belong. Everyone will feel welcome. You will have someone to talk to if you want to talk to people. We promise it will be a great day. And we're going to have music, we're going to have worship, and then we're going to have great food that you cook, and then we're going to have an awesome day. So I really hope you'll be present. Online community, if you live locally, this would be a great opportunity for you to just see like what it's like being with people. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay too. You can stay online. But I really do hope you'll check out these summer meetups. Dawn has done a phenomenal job at working with folks to identify cool ways that we can be in community together. So please do that. One of the things that we also didn't do, because it's not one of my strengths, we didn't budget for it because we didn't think about that. So if you have a few extra dollars and you want to make our summer meetups happen, you can give. We don't talk about giving a lot here because our goal is to not hit you over the head. But if you have some extra resources that you'd like to help make some of these summer events happen, we would be grateful. You can always throw some extra cash in the baskets out back if you have that. And again, no pressure, but we did want to make the ask. We're very excited about that. We really are grateful that you're here. We are our next to the last sermon message about Elijah, and we've been following him and his journey. He was a really he would be like, if you're my generation, the Rocky Balboa of prophets. Like, he could really just kick butt and take names. And then he found himself in just a really, really awful place. And we're going to look at what is called the inner critic today. It's that voice in our head that tells us we are not enough and all the bad things about us. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to wrestle with that some, and we're going to remember that we're all loved by God first, and I hope that it is a powerful and meaningful sermon message for you this morning. Thanks for being here.
Activity and call 911 for immediate response.
Turn off the TV, it's starting to freak me out. It's so loud, it's like my ears are bleeding. What am I feeling? Can't look at the ceiling. The light is so bright, it's like I'm overheating. This mind isn't mine. Who am I to judge? Oh, I should be fine, but it's all too late. Get over it.
Suspicious activity and call 911 for immediate response.
I should be fine, but it's all too much. I should be fine, but I'm not.
Well, here we are again. Smile, look happy, don't look stressed, because then they will underestimate that you have anything of value to say. Engage them, be funny, but don't be disrespectful. Don't use the language you use in your everyday life on the stage. That's not a good idea. Be authentic, but don't be too vulnerable, because if you're too vulnerable, then at some place down the line, things that you say can be and will be used against you. Be theologically deep, but not too much, because if you use too much, then you're boring. Stop worrying about why they're on their phones. Stop worrying if they're asleep. It just will confirm what you already know to be true. Make sure that you don't preach or talk too long, because then you run the risk of next Sunday them saying, I'm not really, let's go to lunch earlier. I want to go get on the lake. Be confident, but don't be arrogant, because no one wants arrogance on the stage. Tell them about your personal life, but make sure that you don't tell them too much, because then it gets uncomfortable. And at the end of the day, make sure you try one more time to be enough. And if you're not, then it all falls apart. Welcome, to my inner critic. And I'm actually sort of proud of myself not to be arrogant. Well, thank you. I love that you love my inner critic. Crap, I didn't plan on you doing that. I have dreaded this message so much. Like, it's been planned for months. Like, we knew that this was what the topic was. And doggone it, if life, the universe, I don't believe God makes things happen to us. We believe as United Methodists that we exist in a space of free will. And so things like we have opportunities that we lean into, other people have opportunities, and then somewhere, and I just wish I understood it more, but I don't because I'm not a scientist, the quantum field, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, I'm studying that, but I just don't know enough about it to understand it, but somehow, like, all these things relate, and if it isn't just the most ironic or God thing that my personal life, like beyond this space, hands me things that just collided with my inner critic this week. And on the way over in the 3-minute commute from the office to here, I always run through like my big points in my head. And I was thinking through the opening, thinking through the inner critic, and I'm like, I'm so scared, like I'm going to start weeping, which is not an admirable quality when you're trying to speak. And I was so scared I was going to start weeping because the things that I just said, they're not made up. I asked ChatGPT, I'm like, hey, buddy, I'm curious, what would you say my inner critic would say? And it's scary that it's actually so in line with the things that I think. Now, granted, after I write a meditation or devotion, I put it in there and I say, help me fix the grammar. I'm too wordy here, blah, blah, blah. And so ChatGPT and I have gotten to know each other rather well. But it was interesting and scary that at the end of it, he said, or mine's a he, it said, now go preach. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you for that. As I lay out every insecurity, and I left off a lot, trust me, because you'd be like, I didn't pay to come here. I don't have to be here. This stuff is real. And I'm not the only one that battles it. We've been talking about this guy named Elijah. And he is one of the most renowned prophets in Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament. And this guy, Elijah, like the Israelites, keep in mind, like just a brief history, they were an oppressed people under the regime of a Pharaoh, and Moses, this man called by God who was not equipped, but was called by God, he got up and he led them out of slavery, and then they just kept finding themselves just in this cycle of toxic behaviors. That would be the language we would use today. And they just kept finding themselves in a mess. And so they find themselves under this regime of King Ahab and his wife, Queen Jezebel. And these folks are so oppressive. And they are worshiping like all these other gods. And God of the Hebrew people, Yahweh, says, Elijah, this is what scripture says, I want you to take out all the people, go to war and fight these people, and you're going to come out the victor. And so Elijah does. I mean, he is the man. And he wins the battle, wipes them all out. And we see in 1 Kings 19, like, he says, I've done it now, and now I feel alone. And last week we talked about that. We talked about anxiety and fear and those feelings. And then God is with him, and he goes away and he flees and he goes to a brook. And this was the earliest part of this message series. He goes to this brook, and after a while, that phrase, fascinating. After a while, the brook dries up. So what he'd always been counting on, it goes away. And then he's like, now what? And God provides every single time. Ravens come and give him food. Then he meets a widower or a widow, and he performs a miracle with her. And then he gets this message like Jezebel is going to kill him, and he flees even more. He goes like 100 miles into the wilderness, and he hides in a cave. Even after he's seen God's provision and God taking care of all the stuff, he hides in a cave. I've asked you to think about what your own caves look like. We all have them. And then I'm going to share with you the same passage that I shared last week, not because I didn't prepare, because this stuff is powerful and I think we easily forget. God comes to Elijah in the cave and asks him, "What are you doing here?" "I've been working my heart out for the God of angel armies. The people of Israel have abandoned your covenant. They've destroyed the places of worship. They've murdered your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me." And then he was told by God, "Go stand on the mountain of attention before God, at attention before God, and God will pass by." And this is the part that is so beautiful and so powerful for today when we talk about that voice that we all have in our brain. And if you are way more self-actualized than me and you don't have that voice telling you, you're not enough, oh, you better try harder, oh, they're going to know that you're a fake. If you don't have that voice, then really, honestly, you are living into who God calls you to be. I'm not being sarcastic. But I know that from my conversations with so many, a lot of us just have that little voice in there. Every time we make a mistake, like, "See, I told you so. Never should have tried that. See, you're just a screw up. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you can do this?" We have that voice, just like Elijah. Go stand on the mountain, God will pass by. A hurricane wind ripped through the mountains and shattered the rocks before God. But God wasn't to be found in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was fire. God wasn't in the fire. After the fire, a gentle and quiet whisper. How do we know if that whisper in our brain is God? Or how do we know if that whisper in our brain is the stuff we carry from our childhood, from hearing voices of authority in our formative years telling us, "You need to be better. This is not enough"? Odds are we all got that at some point from our parents because they were trying to teach us and shape us into being amazing people. Or the other side of that is to just let it be a free-for-all, and that usually never works out. How do we know that inner quiet voice, how do we know what voice matters? Well, that's where psychology comes in, and we learn about things like guilt and shame. And when we look at spirituality and faith in a lens of psychology and understanding the way that we work and the way that we have evolved and the way that we think, it's a beautiful marriage. When Elijah heard the quiet voice, he muffled his face with his great cloak. He went to the mouth of the cave and he stood there. And a quiet voice asked, "So, Elijah, now tell me, what are you doing here?" And Elijah said it again. So let's notice that the hurricane wind, the earthquake, the fire, none of that made an impact on him to change his voice. I've been working my heart out for God, the God of the angel armies, because the people of Israel have abandoned your covenant. They've destroyed your places of worship. They've murdered your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me. And God says, go back the way you came. When you get there, I want you to do this, this, and this. And then you're going to meet a young man by the name of Elisha. He is going to be your right hand. And so he does. And then this passage ends this way. Elijah followed Elijah, and he became his right hand man. So the inner critic, that voice, it's what comes out. We are geared to have it. And honestly, it's not created in us to like tear us down. It evolved into our thinking because of the whole flight or fright mode. It is supposed to protect us. If it senses fear of any kind, it launches into protection mode. So like, go back to my opening example and those things that I think and I wish they were fake, but they're not. I don't think about being funny. That was the only exaggerated point. But I do worry about deep, not deep enough. Engaging, not engaging enough. Vulnerable, not vulnerable enough. What's too much? What's not enough? What's self-deprecating? What isn't? All those things go in my head as I'm walking, as I'm out there, as I'm talking. Like, I don't write a manuscript. I've never been able to do that. I wish I could, but I cannot write all the little words down. And if I do, then I can't remember what they are when I get up here, and I just don't think you want me to read to you. And so, like, I'm afraid. I don't like saying that. I am afraid of not, dadgum, being enough. And I am not asking for your pity. I am not asking for, oh, we love you. I don't need that. Because at my core, I know I'm doing what God has called and gifted and created me to be. But it doesn't mean I don't have human fears. Elijah had just destroyed hundreds and hundreds of people. And when he was at his worst, God showed up. But he still doubted God. How many times do we feel like, because we find ourselves in life situations, that we are not enough? We're going to disappoint someone. We're going to hurt someone. We're going to let them down. That comes from this inner place of shame. And you know I'm an advocate for therapy. Brené Brown is one of the most esteemed psychologists in our society today. She's written amazing, amazing books, Daring Greatly, The Courage to Lead. It's so many great things. I want you to take 8 minutes, and I want you to hear from her this morning, in addition to me, and then we'll tie it back together with theology. Watch this from Brené.
My name is Brene Brown, and I am a shame and empathy researcher at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work. I am the author of I Thought It Was Just Me, Women Reclaiming Power and Courage in a Culture of Shame. So when I first started this work, I was so excited to finally get an understanding of shame and what it meant and why so many of us have turned over big parts of our lives to it. So when I first started the work, I was really passionate about talking about the what is it and how does it work. I wanted to explain to people, here's what I'm learning about shame. Here's how it works in our lives. Because the thing probably a year into this research, I knew three things. One, we've all got it. Two, no one wants to talk about it. And three, the less we talk about it, the more power we turn over to it. So in the beginning, I really focused on the what is shame and how does it work? What is empathy? How does it work? And as I would talk to people, I started to hear the why question more than any other question. People were interested in the what is it and how does it work? But what people really wanted to know is why. Why are you studying this? And why are you insisting that we talk about this? Because, the truth is, these are tough topics. When you tell people that you study shame, vulnerability, and empathy, they kind of look at you like, wow, were all the other topics taken? Or did you draw the short straw in research school? But that's not the case, So people, and that's a mindful question, why do you study this and why do you think we should talk about it? And so that's where I like to start. And I think what's interesting about my answer is that when I could not have answered the question, why shame and empathy 6 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago. But now, after talking to hundreds of men and women around the country about shame, and how it affects the way they live, love, parent, work, build relationships, I finally, for the first time and probably in my career, understand why. If you think about connection, and I talk a lot about connection in my work, connection is our ability to forge meaningful, authentic relationships with other people. I believe that connection is the essence of the human experience. It is what breathes lives and gives meaning to our lives. If you think about connection on a continuum, what I have learned is that anchoring this end of that continuum is empathy. It is what moves us toward deep, meaningful relationship. On the other side of the continuum connection is shame. It absolutely unravels our relationships and our connections with other people. And so to study shame and empathy and to ask people to engage in a national conversation about these things just for the sake of knowing shame and empathy, I think it might be too big of a question, too big of a favor to ask people to talk about it just for that sake. But what I have learned is that if we want to understand connection, if we want to understand what really fills our human spirit, we have to understand what anchors both ends of that continuum. The vulnerability piece is, if you imagine this continuum almost like an equalizer on a stereo, and it has a little knob that you can move, that knob is vulnerability. When we are in our best vulnerability, meaning open, willing to share not only our strengths with people, but our struggles, that moves us towards empathy. Empathy is about being vulnerable with people in their vulnerability. It's about being with folks. If you slide that knob on the continuum, over to shame, that's vulnerability at its worst. That's when I can't let you see these pieces of me because I fear that it will cause disconnection. Three of the big questions I want to answer in my research, where shame and vulnerability and empathy are central, have to do with courage, compassion, and connection. And so I'd like to kind of go through each of those. The first one is courage. When courage first came into the English language, it had a very simple definition. It comes from the Latin word cur, which means heart. And courage meant to speak your mind with your heart, to tell your story. I think over time that definition has changed in terms of the way we use it. But if you think about courage, and I use the term ordinary courage, which I read in an article by Annie Rogers. If you think about ordinary courage, telling our story, how do we do that in a culture of fear? Shame breeds three things: fear, blame, and disconnection. So how do we practice courage in a culture where we are incredibly afraid of not fitting in? How do I tell you my stories about those imperfect moments in my life, about the time when I was just not the mom that I wanted to be, about the time where I really screwed up at work and I lost the client, that I have a partner who's deep into addiction and I'm afraid for people to know because I don't want them to stop caring about my partner or question my judgment in terms of being with him or her. How do I tell these stories, which is the only way that we get out from underneath shame, in a culture where belonging and fitting in and being accepted are so critically important? So we're in this culture right now. What hasn't changed for us as people is the fact that we're wired for story. From the beginning of human time, we are wired to tell our stories. We're not born to keep secrets. We're not born, hating things about us and not sharing them with other people. We're born to tell our stories. So it's not people who have changed, it's the culture that's changed. And so how do we embrace and share the imperfections that make us who we are in a culture where we're afraid to not fit in? The second piece is compassion, and that is really in an important way related to story, because stories are only a form of connection when someone's listening and hearing us. So how do we have the courage to tell our story? But then where do we find the compassion to hear other people's stories? One thing that's real important to understand about shame is that while it's universal and all of us have it, it's triggered for all of us in very different ways. Maybe for me it's about body image or parenting or sex or addiction. For someone else it might be about providing, money, aging, religion. One thing that's universal about it is just listening to shame can be shaming for us. So if you were to share your story with me, how do I stay open and sit in that with you, as opposed to moving into blame and judgment? My name is...
The world's voice tells us that we are measured basically by three things: what you do, what you have, and what other people think of you. Think about that for just a second. The world's voice tells us that we are measured by three things: what we do, what we have, and what other people think of us. So often, that inner voice, it attacks one of those three areas. And the sad thing is, we think that inner voice is the truth about who we are. We think that the inner voice is the truth about who we are. And we hide. We hide from other people, Brown talks about the power of vulnerability, like we try it a little bit, we let ourselves be a little bit vulnerable, and then somebody like sucker punches us, and then we're like, yeah, I'm not about that. Elijah hid in a cave and God found him. So I really want you to remember this morning that the inner critic voice is not telling you the truth about who you are. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to protect that vulnerability, but it's not telling you the truth about who you are. I want to share with you from the Gospel of Mark what the truth truly is. All the Gospels start differently, and Matthew and Luke, they talk about the birth narrative. Mark just dives right into it. The good news of Jesus Christ, the message begins here. Following to the letter, the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. And then we see John the Baptist comes and announces that this guy named Jesus, his cousin, is coming. And then at this time, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee, and he was baptized by John in the Jordan. The moment Jesus came out of the water, he saw the sky split open and God's Spirit, looking like a dove, come down on him. And with the Spirit, a voice said to him, "You are my beloved. You are chosen, and you are marked by my love. You are the pride of my life." It's so interesting to note, Jesus has not performed a single miracle. He's done nothing yet. And God speaks to him with a voice and says, "You are my chosen, you are my beloved." And just as God said that to Jesus, he says that to you. So it's time that we practice what God gives us and what psychologists teach us. A little self-compassion, not self-judgment. Recognizing that we are often our own worst critic. And when that voice starts going, if it is telling you how bad you are, odds are that is not God. Shame is a dangerous thing. And again, it comes from years of conditioning and blame. We're all going to make mistakes. That's why compassion and kindness are so important. We are going to make mistakes in life, every single one of us. And guilt's another thing that is so closely tied into all this stuff. I have folks tell me, "I feel so guilty." And a wise therapist told me once, "Feel guilty when you do something on purpose to hurt someone else." I said, "I feel so guilty about this particular instance." And they said, "Did you do it on purpose?" I said, "Well, no, I didn't do it on purpose. I would never do anything to intentionally hurt someone." And they said, "Well, then don't feel guilty." Guilt is an emotion that if it's going to bring value, it brings value to correct our wrongs. But don't hold on to guilt if you didn't do anything on purpose to hurt someone. Instead, let that be a trigger for being a better person. Learn from your mistakes. I don't know where we forgot to forgive ourselves. We have a West Spotify playlist, Apple Music, Prime Music, all those different platforms, and they create a playlist that has our songs from the series. And the second song that they said today talked about holy water and forgiveness. That was that water that day with Christ. When God said, "You are my chosen and you are my beloved. In you I am pleased." In the very creation of who Christ was, God was pleased. So in the very creation of who you are, God is pleased. And God, because God is God, knows we're going to mess up. And forgiveness is like holy water that rushes down over us. We have to feel it. We've got to own it. We've got to know that it is ours. That's why baptism is such a beautiful thing, that water that comes and washes over us. That, I want you to feel that. The next time you take a shower, you remember baptism, and you remember water washing over you, and you remember that God chooses you. God loves you. Did you mess up? Yeah, we all do. Be better because of it, and know that God loves you. And guess what? Sometimes that means we have to walk away from things that are difficult or not healthy for us. And that is painful. But God created us to be in a state of perfection. We as United Methodists believe we're going on to perfection. That means that we love God. It doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. It means that we love God with all that we are, all that we have, and all that we can be, and that we love one another as we love ourselves. That is what we're striving for. And just like trying to preach on the inner critic when my inner critic is roaring its ugly head, I do believe life hands us lessons sometimes that we have to learn from. Learn from them, embrace them, and stop doing this. I'm grateful for the mask. If you're old like me, you have no idea what this is. It's Minecraft, right? Okay, good. I wasn't even totally sure. So this one would be more my style. And you know what? When I'm wearing my mask of a stormtrooper, I can kick some butt. But that's not who I am. Masks have no place in being children of God. And God loves us without any mask. Know that you are loved. Do not carry shame. And be a person. Today, I want you to be a person of forgiveness. Not for the other people. Today, forgive yourself. And feel that love and that power and that quiet whisper tell you, you are enough. Let us pray. Gracious God, you see through any mask we ever wear. And we are so grateful that that is the kind of God that you are. God, we need to come out from our cave. We need to get out from underneath the bed. And we need to live into being who we are created to be. And if that brings pain to our life, God, help us process the pain. Help us grieve. Help us move through the things that hold us captive and in bondage. And God, may we feel your love wash over us like the baptism waters when Jesus heard, without earning anything, you are my son, my beloved, you are my chosen, and in you I am pleased. God, let us hear that message from you today. I invite you to stay in a state of prayer and meditation as the team sings. I just wanted to keep listening. I didn't want to talk. So our inner critic will make us wear a mask. And I thought about wearing a mask, but then it messed with the microphone. And I bring enough stress to the tech team every Sunday. They do not need to worry about me screwing up the technical equipment. So I didn't put it on. And I'm glad I didn't. Because you know what? I want you to remember we've all got one of these, and we carry it around, and that loud voice makes us do this. It makes us hide. We are not created to hide. And remember this, if you don't remember anything else I say except don't run out of gas, remember this. The loud voice is not the only voice, and it certainly was not the first one. The first one said, you are loved, and in you I am pleased. Go in peace.